This is section 2.6, and the nice thing is there's no vocabulary because we already took care of it with 2.5. But I am going to go through a little bit, talk about theorem, because this is a word that you're going to see a lot of now. It says here, a theorem is a conjecture or a statement that you prove to be true. Now, this word right here, conjecture, if you remember, a conjecture is an accepted statement of fact. So essentially, a theorem is an accepted statement of fact that you prove for sure to be true. Okay, so the very first theorem that we're going to look at is what we call the vertical angles theorem. And we've talked about vertical angles here in the past, and we know from the vertical angles theorem that vertical angles are congruent. So angle 1 and angle 3, they're vertical angles. They are congruent to each other. They're the same measure. Angle 2 and angle 4, they are vertical from each other. They are congruent to each other. Now, again, it goes through and shows you how to prove the vertical angles theorem. Okay, so this is the two-step proof that they put in here, and you can go through that. I'm not going to go through that in this case because, I mean, honestly, trying to save some time here, and let's go through some examples. Okay, so it says here, what is the value of x? So, first of all, I got to identify what kind of angles I have. First, I've got vertical angles. Well, I know from the vertical angles theorem that vertical angles are congruent. So, I can set 2x plus 21 and equal to 4x. Okay, I'm not doing a proof here. All I'm doing is finding the value of x. So I'm going to subtract 2x from each side. And then I've got 21 equals 2x. And then I'm going to divide by 2. And x is going to be, in this case, 10.5. Now, how do I check to see if my answer is correct? If I plug in 10.5, I should get the same thing on both spots, okay? So 4 times 10.5, if I plug 10.5 here, 4 times 10.5 is 42. So that's 42 degrees, okay? 2 times 10.5 is 21. 21 and 21 is 42 degrees. They match up. Okay, so the value of x is, in this case, works out. All right, second example. Again, don't forget, at any time you can pause if I'm going too fast for you and look through some things here. It asks here, what is the value of x? Again, you got to figure out what kind of angles I have. I've got vertical angles here. So because I have vertical angles, I can say that 3x is equal to 2x plus 40. I'm going to subtract 2x from each side, and if I subtract 2x, x is going to equal 40. Well, 3 times 40 is 120. When I plug it back in, 2 times 40 is 80, and 80 plus 40 is 120, so it matches up. So in this case, my value of x is 40. Okay? So these are just simple examples as we look through of using the vertical angles theorem. Simple examples. Okay. All right, let's look at an example that's a little bit more challenging because now I've got more than just the two angles. Okay, I've got two types of angles here. I've got verticals and I've got linear pairs. And in a way, we've kind of already done this a little bit, but you'll notice we have all three of the same variables. Here's what I want you to do on this. I want you to find x. So we're finding x, find the value of x, and I want to find the measure of each angle. Now this one, you're going to have to write down this picture because this picture is not in your notes. So you're going to have to kind of jot this one down. So if you need to, pause the video so that you can write the picture down and then start it again so that you can see how I do this. Okay, so on this problem, what I'm going to do, I notice that I have vertical angles here. 9x plus 2, 10x minus 12 are verticals. I could use any linear pair and say that, you know what, these two add up to be 180. I could do that too. What I'm going to do here, 9x plus 2 equals 10x and minus 12 because those are vertical angles to each other. They're equal to each other. So I'm going to subtract 9x and I get 2 equals 1x minus 12 because I subtracted 9. Okay, then I'm going to add 12, so now x is equal to 14. All right, so I got the first part down. Now, what I need to do is I need to plug it back in to make sure that my answer makes sense, okay? So if I plug it back into this angle down here, 10 times 14 is 140. 140 minus 100 or minus 12 is 128 degrees. Okay? Which means if I plug in 14 up here, this better be 128. Okay? Well, as you look there, if I plug in 14 times 9, okay, 14 times 9 is 126, and 126 plus 2 is 128. Now I also need to plug in x to the other angle as well. Now I can plug it in for x, or I can try and see if I can use a linear pair. Okay, so I know that these two angles here add up to 180. So I could take 180 minus 28 to get this. Or these two angles add up to 180. Do the same thing. Or I could plug 14 in for x. 14 times 3 is 42, and 42 plus 10 is 52 degrees. Now, these two numbers had better add up to 180, and they do. So that checks out. Okay, so you got vertical angles, you have linear pairs in this example. Okay, last example here, and this example has two different sets of variables. Okay, so again, I've got two different types of angles. I got vertical angles here, and I've got linear pairs. Okay, so since I know I got vertical angles, I'm going to go ahead and set those equal to each other. And the nice thing is that the same variables happen to be in those ones. Okay, so I can now solve for x. If I subtract 3x, this is going to be 10 equals x minus 40. And then if I add 40, x is going to be 50. Okay, so what I'm trying to do is find x and find y. Well, if x is 50, this is 4 times 50 minus 40. Well, 4 times 50 is 200. 200 minus 40 is 160 degrees. So this angle right here is 160 degrees. That's important because if I use these two angles, they should add up to be 180. Okay, so I should be able to use 160 plus y, or y plus 160 had better be 180, because those two add up to be 180. They're supplementary, they're a linear pair. Subtract 160 from each side, and now y is going to be 20. So I found the value of x, and I found the value of y. Okay. If I wanted to, I could put x in up here as well. I could put x in up here. 3 times 50 is 150. Plus 10 is 160. And as a matter of fact, I can also figure out how much this angle is too across. Y and that angle are vertical, and if y is 20, then this guy is 20. Okay, so I can find out lots of different things. All right, now you should be able to use you should be able to complete the problems on your class kick now that you've watched this video.